when you're setting out to build the relationship with the client, if you're talking about security from the early stages of the engagement and setting expectations around, look, security is really important. This is where we're responsible. This is where you're responsible as of this engagement. When this engagement ends, these are the things you got to take care of, because if you get hacked, these are the problems you're going to run into. If you would like us to do that, we can do that. But this is part of this go-forward maintenance and sustainment agreement. And one of those things is going to be security. So being clear and delineating the responsibilities just through basic expectation management is going to put you in a better position to succeed with your clients long term. It's not just with security, that's with anything. You need to have that open communication, but the discussion needs to start from the beginning. Again, security is a bigger entity. It's a fluid thing. It's bigger than just updates, but you need to align those expectations from the beginning with your clients. They don't know. You're the subject matter expert. You need to engage and let them know.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the WP Elevation podcast. I'm Kristina Romero, coach here at WP Elevation and WordPress consultant myself here in the United States. I'm so excited to feature on the podcast today Dre Armeda of Security. We're going to talk about the mystery of website security and what you need to know to educate yourself if you're going to take care of clients' websites on an ongoing basis. We're going to compile all this gold into an amazing download for you, so stay with us.
This is the WP Elevation Podcast, helping WordPress consultants elevate.
Hey, this episode of the WP Elevation Podcast is brought to you by WP Elevation. Well, more specifically, it's brought to you by a bunch of our happy customers. See, frankly, I feel a little bit awkward telling you how great WP Elevation is, because you're probably not going to believe me, because WP Elevation is my baby. It's something that we started over 3 years ago. Of course, now we're a team of coaches and mentors, and we have hundreds, and by the time you're listening to this, probably thousands of members all over the world. But it still really is something that I'm very passionate about, and of course, if you join WP Elevation, we make revenue and we make profit. So it's a little bit awkward if I tell you how great it is, because you probably think I'm just trying to sell you on it, and partially I am, because I know how beneficial the program is. So what I'd love to do instead is just introduce you to some of our customers. So if you go to wpelevation.com/thepodcast, all one word, you'll be able to hear some of those stories from our customers and hear for yourself how WP Elevation has impacted their business and changed their lives. I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you check it out at some point. Right now, let's get back to the podcast.
Hey guys, I want to welcome Dre Armeda to the podcast. If you don't know who he is, then you might be living under a rock if you have anything to do with WordPress. He is the co-founder of Security, a suite of website security products and services to help maintain sites. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I am so excited to have you because I have some pressing questions for you. But why don't you tell us a little bit about, for those who don't know, what Security is and what does it do?
Certainly. So Security is a website security service and company. We've got, like you said, a suite of services that really revolve around helping folks kind of realize, understand, and secure their websites. So the challenges that we find, obviously, so there's a lot of malware out there on the internet today. So when we set out to build the company, it was really a way to figure out if your site had been, the integrity had been in some way penetrated. So we would alert against any issues that were found. Over time, we found that that's not very actionable. So we built a remediation capability to come in and when there was an incident, we'd be able to respond to that and clean it up. So we offer still today monitoring of websites, to see if anything's happening, the cleanup of the website if it is compromised, as well as now we've over the last few years pushed into more the preventive side. We've created a firewall, a web application firewall that helps protect against any of those attacks and that bad traffic from ever hitting your site.
Nice. Well, I guess that begs the question then. I mean, why is that important now? Why is website security important now, especially with the popularity of WordPress?
Well, it's always been important. I think, unfortunately, most folks don't realize that importance or the actual risk floor that they're dealing with a website online. Today's attacks, which are in the millions daily, and you hear about these reports of these major websites getting attacked. Small websites, if you do any small research online, you'll see hundreds of people talking about their website being compromised, and often they don't understand why. It's like, we have this cupcake website, or we have a website for our dry cleaning business. Why are people attacking us? Well, it's because 95+% of all attacks out there are opportunistic automated attacks, right? They're not attacking because they want to come in and steal that, the intellectual property that your cupcake company is, and maybe that's the case. And certainly there are targeted attacks, but the high majority is opportunistic attacks. And what they do is they're looking for these known vulnerabilities. They're using automated tools to come in and scan for the internet at different layers to see if these vulnerabilities exist in your environment. And when they see that, they inject some type of code or a file, something to that effect. So you take command and control of your website. And then that may be something as simple as just some type of a file that allows them to come and enter a month from now.
Yeah.
Most of the time they aren't really infecting right away, but they use that website when it makes sense for them. So maybe they're looking to do a targeted attack on the FBI or some huge government agency or company like Google. And what they need is that computing power from millions of websites to go and do that attack. Well, by having some type of vulnerability on your site that's been infected, or having that command and control script injected into their site, they can now take the control of your site whenever they need to do that big attack. But it's important because there's value to your website, whether you value it or not. Again, they can use that to attack other sites or even your customers, right? Mm-hmm. In the sense of we've seen a lot in the e-commerce space lately where you see these kind of phishing pages that are added to these websites. And when you think you're adding a credit card to this site to go and purchase your product alone, that might not be the case. They might have had some kind of third-party website or iframe or something like that put on the site that when you're entering your credit card credentials, you think you're entering into the site that you're going to be purchasing your products from, but you're actually sending off that personal identifiable information, all of your credit card information off to some server in Russia, right? And it's a reality. So now you're putting a really big issue to your clients, to your visitors, to your customers. So there's obviously brand equity issues to deal with there. There's financial problems. Certainly when you start to think about e-commerce specifically, you stand a risk of being blacklisted by all the major credit card companies out there when you start thinking about PCI and some of the regulatory compliance issues that come from it. So there's a lot of different problems and reasons why it's important, certainly. And it's a real problem today.
Well, and I think that's our worst nightmare. So a majority of our audience are people who build websites for other people. Sure. And we tend to, at least I encourage people to keep them up on some kind of monthly website care plan. And that's the worst fear. Like that's where my heart has started having like heart palpitations, like this, this idea that some site I could have could be compromised. And the client, being put in this like legal bind, like legally, like that's a nightmare. So one thing I would love to hear from you, and we'll, provide this to our viewers in the form of a download, is some things that, we need to think about if we're website consultants or designers or developers who are caring for our clients' websites. When it comes to a specific WordPress security, what are some of the things that we need to think about and we need to make sure we have covered so that, none of these like absolutely disastrous things happen and we're put in this terrible predicament?
Well, let me set the stage with a little bit of data that I think is important for people to understand that the size, the footprint here, and maybe some of the severities that we're dealing with before we even look at controlling our web sites in a way that reduces risk. There's 1.1 billion active websites on the internet today. That's if you think about the size of that, that's insane. That's according to Internet Live Stats. We hit the 1 billion club here in 2014, and it's grown to 1.12 billion over the last couple years. So that just shows you the sheer size of the attack vector here. So folks know this, right? They've got some monetary gain to attacking your site, whether that's redirecting it to a Viagra site, whether that's having some type of pop-ups come up on your site, or of course using it as some type of mechanism or part of their botnet, larger botnet, to attack other websites. Whatever the case may be, that it's monetarily driven, and there's 1.1 billion websites active on the net today. So that goes to show you the power. Now, it's just websites, right? We could start talking about your home routers and CCTV and all that fun stuff that now is an attack vector as well. But maybe a discussion for another point.
Right.
Now, when you think about that 1.1 billion, about 33% of those websites are powered by some type of CMS. Okay, so that's not just WordPress, although WordPress is obviously the majority. 70% of those or so are WordPress. But you're talking about a lot of websites, at least a third of that. So 300 plus million websites that have some type of software driving the management of this website, whether that's adding content or visual changes and so on. So there's actual code there that now can be, if penetrated, may be vulnerable and can be exploited for use for nefarious reasons. Now, again, 33%, that number kind of comes to play again. If you divide it further, 73% of that 33% is powered by 4 platforms specifically: Drupal, WordPress, Magento, and Joomla. So those are really the big attack vectors when it comes to content management systems. And the challenge that we run into there is that most of these sites do not have anybody to engage in making sure that they have some type of sustainable patch and vulnerability management system, right? So they don't have some type of maintenance and sustainment program. Like the majority of them are sitting there stagnant and they go out of date. And that's bad for a lot of reasons, right? Well, the two that come to mind, obviously, one is the security implications there. The longer any piece of software sits on the internet, the larger the opportunity for some type of vulnerability to be exploited. Because it may not be vulnerable today, but a year from now, certainly bugs happen. Like, new features are added, things change. So over time, you have a higher risk of some type of vulnerability. That's one part of it. But when you think about all these stagnant websites that are sitting there that have no representation, no ability to expand, no way to iterate, your client's losing opportunity. So you as a service provider are missing the ball in being able to extend your relationship, which therefore extends your opportunity to gain. Certainly, it diminishes the return for the investment made by that client. So now that website's probably never going to realize its full potential. We've got to think about a website as a living organism. It's something that comes to life the moment it goes into production. That's not when it's over. That's when it starts, right? So we've got to think about how that all works and how it comes together. And when you think about companies doing this on their own, over 47% of the companies that are running websites on their own have no way of tracking open source code. So they're not updating, they're not changing things in an intuitive way, maybe to standards using, let's say, WordPress's coding standards, or they're just hacking core, doing just silly stuff, right? If you think about that number, I mean, I think that's pretty telling about where that opportunity lies. There's a lot of opportunity and for two things. One, again, to secure more websites, become a more responsible partner with the clients that you're building websites for, but two, the opportunity for you to come in there and really help maintain those properties, help them grow that, right? So you launch the site, all right, does it do what we hoped it would do? Is it gaining all of those conversions that we thought it would the day that we architected it? I mean, maybe not, but if you're not iterating and going through that process and continually making it better, it's challenging to understand that. Mm-hmm. I think the controls that I like to apply, or maybe the thought behind how we manage these things from a security perspective, is understanding that security is not a continuous, or not a static state. It's a continuous process. We've got to continue to think about security from the day we start talking about putting a website online to the day we take it offline, right? So that's through the entire life cycle of the build, through the maintenance and sustainment part of that. And there's obviously various portions of that that need to be looked at, whether it's credentials, whether it's updates. And I'd like to talk a bit about the entire stack, because we often get stuck on the platform and there's other security implications we need to think about. But really it comes down to people, process, and technology, right? That's great that your clients want to take care of this, but do they have the processes in place to keep up with security on their website? Do they have the proper technology to do that? Are they scanning things? Do they have firewalls in place to mitigate risk? Maybe not, but that's up to you to make sense of that.
Mm-hmm. Totally. No, It's so true. And honestly, you're making such a great case for what I say to people all the time, that, you're doing your clients a disservice if you build them a website and then just hand it over and you're not there to help take care of it and maintain it for them. So, what are some of the things that we want to make sure we do? So we want to update WordPress, we want to update plugins. What are some of the things we want to make sure we're doing to at least cover that baseline before we reach out to some additional services? And, what does a firewall do? What do those things do? And where does that factor into an ongoing care of a website?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different controls, right? I don't like getting into the top 10 list of things, and because we've been doing that, not us specifically, but as a community at large for many years, and that doesn't fix the problem. I think what we need to consider is, yes, certainly there's controls that we need to put in place. Okay, yes, you need to be updating your software in a timely manner, because that's it makes up for a significant portion of the attacks that come in. Outdated software, but it's beyond just WordPress. You have an entire stack, so the attack surface for an attacker to come in is larger than just WordPress or whatever software you're using. It's third-party plugins. It's services and integration points into that platform. It's the web server software. So are you running Nginx? What are you running there, right? It's the database, and whether that's set up in an appropriate way. It's that entire network, that hosting provider. Is it set up in a way that makes sense to reduce risk? How are you logging into your website? Is it FTP? Are you passing all your credentials in the clear? These are all things that we need to be thinking about. Are you logging in from Starbucks, where there's no secure secure mechanism, no encryption on that network, where now all of your credentials could be gathered and used for other activity? So we've got to be thinking more holistically. We need to be thinking well beyond just WordPress. Yes, we need to update WordPress. We need to make sure all of our software is up to date, but we also need to be very, conscientious of how we're connecting and passing files and interacting, accessing that data, accessing that software online. Passwords are still a thing. We're in end of 2016. We got a week left, and we're still talking about passwords. People using password. That's a problem.
Right. It's the hardest thing as handling clients' websites for them, because they can change their password and then it's like password 123. That is so good. I'm so glad you said that, because I think the hardest challenge for us as consultants when we take over websites is assuring the client and them saying, my website's not going to get hacked, right, by going on this plan. And you can't ever guarantee the site is ever not going to be hacked because of everything you're saying there in terms of a holistic approach, especially if they're on a shared server, and if they have any type of third-party plugin. How you lock down that site to never be hacked, you'd almost take it off the internet.
That's the only way, right, is to take it and destroy it, right? Get rid of it. There is no silver bullet, right? The name of the game is risk reduction, and the name of the game is implementing some type of defensive depth strategy. One solution alone is not gonna give you the best opportunity to reduce risk of attack. The way that I like to look at it, and oftentimes people get stuck on the whole, hey, I've got these 17 security plugins. It's amazing. I should never get hacked. And why am I now serving Viagra ads? Well, two reasons. One, there's a certain level of insecurity and misinformation that's pushed through a lot of these so-called security plugins. So that's an issue, and we can get into that, and that's a whole other episode. And two, it's likely you have these 20 plugins in there, and most of them are configured incorrectly. So misconfiguration is a major issue as well. I like to think I'm pretty good at the whole security thing. I've gotten okay over the years. I actually run one plugin for security on my website, and it's not even the main focus of the plugin. The main focus of the Security plugin, which I have installed on all of my sites, is to just kind of monitor the integrity of stuff, right? I've done some minor hardening things that's included with the plugin, like killing PHP execution in directories it shouldn't be in, which is super helpful. That in and of itself reduces the amount of potential attacks that can happen. A lot of the major ones that happen out there have happened because PHP is able to be executed in directories like your image directories and uploads and stuff, which doesn't make sense. But I use that plugin mostly for integrity checks. I want to see what type of attempts are coming to the site and what's happening on the site, right? So like who published the post? Like when was it published? Why was it published? Why was there a new user account created? That type of stuff is super important, and that's what I use the plugin for. That helps out a lot. But that also integrates to the edge. And when I say the edge is outside of my environment, I have a firewall, and that's what the Security Firewall does. It's a web application firewall that sits on the perimeter. So you've got the big giant cloud that we want to call the cloud, all this cool marketing lingo, the internet, right? Right? We've got all these websites, all these servers, someone else's server somewhere else. And people are traversing that, and there's traffic coming in and hitting your website. Well, our firewall sits on the edge there. And what you do is you send all of your traffic to our firewall instead of directly to your servers. We check all of that. And if there's any bad stuff, we split it out and it goes away. Never hits your server. So now we've got some real defense layers on the edge that give you the opportunity to check all that traffic, minimize. Excuse me, I'm a bit under the weather. I keep coughing. That firewall allows that traffic to be checked. So if they're looking for known vulnerabilities, and let's say your software is out of date, we virtually patch it at the edge. We know that there's an update, right? Even if you're not updated, we can check against that traffic that's trying to hit the known vulnerability in the old software, and we stop it. The other thing that it helps you with is availability. There's a lot of the distributed denial of service attacks going on. Okay, there's excuse me, that's a big challenge. It's taking out the websites at different layers, and it's just inundating with traffic, things like that. Well, we stop that at the edge, so it's never hitting your site. Oftentimes you hear these plugins that are like, yeah, we can help you with DDoS, and we can help you, with these things, but they're actually on the server. So all that traffic's already entered your environment. There's not really a way to stop that once they're in there. So you've really got to stop that at the edge. So I think that the best strategy to employ is defense in depth. That's fine that you have application level plugins and security tools, and you need something at the edge. But at the end of the day, have multiple tools. It's not one over the other. It's about using them in marriage, having layers, so that when attackers come in, even if they peel one layer of that onion back, you've got other ones there to protect you. That's super important. Lastly, in that context, I think one area that we often get stressed out about is brute force attacks. Like, well, I had about 1,000 people trying to log into my WP admin. Well, why are they logging into your WP admin? It's because it's available. They know it's there. So they're scanning the net, right? They're scanning and trying to enumerate usernames and passwords on known WP admins, right? So block it all together. That's another thing that we do at the edge with the firewall is we employ a whitelist approach. We deny everything unless it says we tell the system that this specific IP address is allowed to log in there. No one else can access it. So that scanning thing goes away in terms of brute force on WP admin, because now we just don't allow anybody to reach it. Right. So there's things you can do to mitigate, but it's a lot of it's done at the edge.
No, that's really good. And it's like you said, it's almost like a sliding scale with how much you want to lock something down and how much you want to make it available. And every client of our clients can be different. But I find the ones that have been hacked before are suddenly very, very interested in this and are willing to take the extra precautions to make that never happen again. So let's say doomsday happens, and a client's website is hacked, what is the normal steps? Because I know someone will be watching this podcast and they will remember this step. So reach out to you guys. I mean, what would someone do if their client's website was hacked? How much of their responsibility is it to clean up the client site for them, or where should they go?
It really depends on the agreements with them, and that's one of the important things when you're setting out to build the relationship with the client. If you're talking about security from the early stages of the engagement and setting expectations around, look, security is really important. This is where we're responsible. This is where you're responsible as of this engagement. When this engagement ends, these are the things you got to take care of, because if you get hacked, these are the problems you're going to run into. If you would like us to do that, we can do that. But this is part of this go forward maintenance and sustainment agreement. And one of those things is going to be security. So being clear and delineating the responsibilities just through basic expectation management is going to put you in a better position to succeed with your clients long term. That's not just with security, that's with anything. You need to have that open communication, but the discussion needs to start from the beginning. Again, security is a bigger entity. It's a fluid thing. It's bigger than just updates, but you need to align those expectations from the beginning with your clients. They don't know. You're the subject matter expert. You need to engage and let them know what these things are and what could potentially happen. So you get to the end stage, the website's online, and all of a sudden they get hacked 6 months later. If you don't have an engagement with them, they're still going to come back to you. And that's the reality of not having a maintenance and sustainment agreement. They're going to come back to you anyway. So why not go and talk to them about this? I think that one of the important things, and even early on when you're setting up the site, is to make sure that everything is segmented. That in and of itself is going to reduce the risk, one, of getting infected, and two, getting reinfected. What we find often is what we call soup kitchen servers. Tony Perez, our CEO, coined. We were joking around years ago, and he coined this phrase, and I've used it in presentations since 2011. Soup kitchen server is where you throw everything, including the kitchen sink, into that server. Okay, so you've got 20 websites, some production, some staging, some development sites. You've got all of your backups. You've decided to throw all your email and your email processing on there. I don't know. Now it's a file server, so you're serving images off, whatever the case, but you've thrown it all in there. There's no segmentation, so that one important money-making website that you have in production that's involved with all this other crud on that server is now at a huge risk, because all that other stuff, if any of it gets hit, you got what's called cross-contamination. You get lateral movement in that shared environment, and now everything's a risk of getting infected, even if it's vulnerable or not. So from the beginning, when you're putting a site up, is make sure that it's segmented. If you get to a stage where you're infected, you need to start segmenting at that stage. So that's a interesting thing to consider for your clients, is try to have their production sites away from everything else. Don't store everything on the server. Yeah. If it's not in use, don't keep it. You can always download that plugin that you're not using right now if you want to use it later, what have you. But they will come back to you. They're going to ask you what's going on. And if you're not sure how to clean it, yeah, certainly I would say that's what we do for a living. We have an incident response team that works 24 hours a day. We've got, we're a team of 100 folks now across the 26 countries. Wow. We've got folks that can come in and clean your site. We clean hundreds daily. So it's something that we can certainly help with.
Well, I think this is such a great topic for this podcast, Dre, because you're right. It's all about education. And if we're going to put ourselves in this space and provide product, to a client, we do need to educate ourselves on this huge piece of the puzzle that could kind of destroy everything you built. So we will put all this great stuff that Dre has told us in a download for you to kind of download to the viewers and take it and educate yourself so that and you can kind of regurgitate this to your clients so you can better protect yourself if these things happen, which inevitably, I've had 50 plus clients on care plans over the course of the last couple of years, and it's happened a couple times. It's just inevitable, even with all that you do. So it's just inevitable. So I appreciate this. This was so informative, and I think it really is going to resonate with a lot of our viewers. And you are so kind to donate your time and give us all this gold. So I really appreciate it, Dre. And
my pleasure.
I'm going to have all the social media links and all that info in the blog post for people to follow you and follow Security and follow what you guys are doing. And we really appreciate you stepping into this space, in the WordPress space, and offering this information for all of us.
It's my pleasure, and I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a good time. Always love talking about security and helping folks find ways to get better at what they're doing in terms of their management of their website. If you have the opportunity, head over to blog.security.net. I just actually did a podcast, a webinar on this exact subject, how you kind of introduce website security for your client websites. So there's a couple of blog posts on the blog there, as well as some links back to our webinars that may be helpful as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks, Dre.
All right. Thank you.
A huge thanks to Dre Armeda for that interview, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Now remember, to get that gold in order to educate yourself, to educate your clients, go to wpelevation.com/Dre Armeda for the download. And also leave some comments in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. As always, subscribe to this podcast, leave us a rating, show us some love. In order to do that, go to wpelevation.com/iTunes. I hope to see you on the next podcast, and until then, go elevate.